Welcome to IT Mastermind Talks, your access to insights and experiences from thought leaders in the IT services industry and those that support the industry. Our podcast features not only the seasoned professionals charting their start to exit journey, but also the key contributors who help ensure their success. We delve into the diverse challenges encountered within the IT services realm, encompassing both professional hurdles and personal obstacles. Join us, be part of our growing community, and engage in the conversation. Hosted by Ian Markram of Loading Growth.
Okay, hi, good morning. I've got a really good friend and a long-term client, David Lockie from Mojo Soup, joining us today on the podcast on IT Masterminds. And it's going to be awesome because I know their business really, really well, and it's amazing business as well. So yeah, we're going to go through a series of questions, the deep dive questions that we have for the CEOs or leaders of sort of IT technology companies. And with that, you're going to get to know David and the challenges, obviously, of running a small services firm and the growth pains that come with that and where he sits in the technology stack and the services world as well. So I'm going to start back right at the beginning, David.
Okay.
Background and the journey. Okay, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ask you some questions just to can you just give us an idea what inspired you to become sort of a consultant initially and then maybe an IT services business owner? What really inspired you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ian. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me onto this, by the way. It's get me outside my comfort zone. I started life as a civil engineer. So I used to design and build stormwater drainage and roads and subdivisions. But the bit that I loved most about doing that was wrangling data, writing apps to process and the designs and create a design. And it all started for me when the company I was working for, it was a global engineering company, they had a contractor building database systems, and he's just a really interesting guy. The thing that attracted to me at first was he was a guy who wore a big brim hat, didn't look like an engineer, didn't look anything like everybody else in there. But I was just curious about him as an individual, and I got to know him.
Yeah.
Turns out he was writing database systems, and he just took me under his wing. I showed some interest, had the opportunity to work with him, and it just opened up a real passion for me in sort of database systems and IT. And then I reflected back when I was a kid, my parents had a construction company. I used to go and work in their office, and I laughed over the thing I loved doing was building forms in Word, all of their quality assurance forms. I loved setting up all of their desktops. So they're a standard operating environment. I didn't even know that was called managed IT. Didn't even know what I was doing, but I just love that kind of stuff, automating everything, making everything look standard, make it look good, and see the impact it has on people. So I think it started very early. Yeah, I say to people, it was a hobby, became a day job, became a business kind of thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So we're going to lead on to the next question. Did you have any initial steps to start your own IT services business? Now, some people start it by mistake or, by design.
Yes.
What happened with you there? How did you get to start your consultancy business?
Yeah, it was about a 2-year journey for me when I sort of finally decided I do want to do this. The company I was with, I decided I'd either stay there for another 10 years, fantastic engineering company, or do my own thing. So I took some long service leave. I had an idea. One customer through my network said, hey, we really need a database system to do this. So I took some long service leave, built out something for them. And that just gave me a test of what it could be like. Then I went back to work at 4 days a week and had an idea around our first product, which was SoupMail, which is team-based email filing. And that kind of launched it. I started working on that part-time. But then the professional services really came when I said, oh, look, through my network, I've got enough people. And I had a colleague of mine who's still a customer to today actually called me up and said, we need to implement a project management system on the Microsoft stack. Have you done that before? And actually, I'd never done it before, but I knew about the stack. And that was my first gig. So I sort of launched out on my own on the back of having enough work for the next 3 or 4 months. That was it.
Brilliant. You mentioned a few gems there. I know your business around SoupMail. You're relaunching that shortly as well. I'm looking forward to that relaunch. And we'll get Ewan, who's David's co-founder. Yeah. We'll get him on that on a separate topic and how you actually built that into a product. A lot of services firms want to build products, but they're caught up with the service delivery on site. So you guys have actually built a product and successful, and it solves a problem, a unique problem, and that's brilliant. So I'll get Ewan on that at some stage as well. So thanks for good. Yeah, it's good. So you started your company. How did you start your first client? Just talk about the way you got. You just mentioned there, you got a client, but what was the How did you actually get your first client? A bit more detail on that.
Yeah. So, what was the approach? So the colleague sort of called me and said,
Yeah.
"This is the problem. We're a growing business. We run lots of projects. We need to track how they're going." He didn't have visibility of all the things they were doing and where they were up to. And I said, "Well, coming from an engineering, that sounds like a project management system. It was just rolling out the Microsoft suite." So I said, "There's a thing called Project Online. How about I support that for you?" And it was actually the original project server based. So I basically taught myself in a week how to install and how to do that. And then I just went to site and used that project as my learning project.
Yeah.
So I did it once and sort of on my own. I think I've got enough to front up credibly at site to then actually implement it.
Yeah, you got that, David, you got skills already. You got those human
Yeah.
skills and
Yeah.
consulting skills already. So that's a
Yeah.
really good, important thing. And then you fake the technology a bit before you can make it, and that's how it worked. Great.
Yeah, spot on. I think my journey into this was definitely the consulting side first.
Yeah.
The engineering company, I was in their consulting business. So the stuff I love most was actually being on site, engaging with customers, finding out what their problem was. And then the technology just became an enabler for that.
For sure.
So that was definitely my entry point. What is the problem? And using my limited skills at the time, I could solve some pretty gnarly and enterprise challenges. And I thought, well, that sounds great.
That's it. And, solving problems is where you get paid, and
yeah.
I think it's, if you can understand those problems from a consulting perspective, you'll always be in a job as a consultant of some sort. Okay. Yeah. Last question on that sort of the background journey side. Do you remember, sort of a long time ago now, do you remember what was the biggest challenge you faced in the early stages of your business?
Getting the right people was probably, there was a real nervousness around both the responsibility and the impact of bringing people on. So that was probably in the early days. That was one of the key challenges, was to get the right people, but then also establish the credibility, because Mojo Soup in the early days was very much a consulting organization.
Yep.
And then to compete with the bigger vendors was always the challenge back then. But yeah, I'd say people, and then just setting ourselves to compete with some of the bigger vendors.
Yeah. It's always the challenge.
Yeah, because they'll say, "Oh, well, you're small. Do you have the capability? What scalability do you have?" That was some of the challenges in the early days. We knew we could do it with a small team, but we're up against others that had a much longer track record and a much bigger business. For a lot of our bigger customers, they wanted that.
Yeah, insurance. Yeah, definitely. All right. So the growth and development sort of section, what I like about you folks is you've built a brand, and it's an amazing brand, and you put a lot of effort and time into that. And it's good. I know, we've had these discussions over the years, how much is too much, or how much is, not enough, because what do you really get out of it? But I can definitely see the value where you guys have been, is you've built a really good culture around the brand.
Yeah.
And from that, you've got some awesome talent in your organization, and you built your method out, and you've got your IP and your Spark and everything else. And can you just talk a bit about, just a little bit about that? Because that is the thing. When I think of you guys, you've got some really good, good assets in that area.
Just on the brand side, the thing that sticks out to me is when we launched a customer experience program. We interviewed some of our best customers going back years ago. And some of the feedback from that was the outside doesn't reflect the inside, in terms of them engaging with us, working with us. Our brand and what we presented to the outside world didn't represent that. And the other thing we heard loud and clear was, what we love about you, Mojo Soup, is you're humans first, technicians second. So that was the kind of birthing ground for our brand to really emphasize that, which I think is even more important now with automation and AI. What does it actually mean to be a human interacting to solve these problems? So that was the branding work we did. But the products and services, without your question, around Mojo Spark and our Mojo Design Sprints and all of those kind of things, they really emerged out of one of our core strengths has been, and still is around our ability to create bespoke solutions, bring together a number of different pieces. And that's like Mojo Soup, the essence of the individual, the mojo, you bring it together and you mix up a soup. So that's in our DNA, our ability to assemble many different things to create a bespoke solution. There's also challenges to that. And one of the ways we've tried to address the scalability of bespoke solutions is to identify a couple of packaged offerings that we can train people around, that have a defined set of deliverables, and we can manage the quality around it. So we've got what we call our Mojo Spark and Design Sprint approach. And again, it speaks to the human first, technician second. It's really an opportunity for us to engage with our customer with an open plate around what problems are they trying to solve, what opportunities they're trying to realize, bring our outside in perspective and facilitate them through a really human-centered approach to define what possible future state could look like and what some of the options might be.
Great.
So it's a really, design-led, human-led approach, which is very aligned to our brand as a repeatable offering that we can do.
And I think that's, as you said, I think that's where tech is becoming more of a commodity now, more and more.
Yeah.
And it's around, the outcomes, focusing on the client outcomes and how to map that back to the tech.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that's really important. So, but just on to some other questions, Dan. And how did you scale your business from its early days to where it's now? What do if I had to ask you, I know it's a big question because you've done a lot to get there, and you've had pain and you've had glory up and down, which is every IT service owner has. I mean, it's not, it doesn't go smoothly. So how did you, what's your main couple of points that you thought have helped you scale?
Yeah, I think initially it was just a decision to be, that is what we want to do. Because for a long period of time, we just sort of organic, and we realized at our size, we couldn't stay where we were. There wasn't really an opportunity for career paths for our team. There was an opportunity for us to have a bigger impact. So we realized we couldn't really stay where we are. We didn't want to shrink. So the decision first to grow. We had a couple of false starts, and it wasn't really till we started getting some advice from people like yourselves and others to identify, well, what's actually possible? How might you go about that? And so I would say where we grew organically for quite a while, but once we set a goal to say, yes, actually we do want to grow, and set some targets around it, and then got some outside in help, that's probably what really transformed us in terms of growing.
Yeah, no, definitely. You've put the focus on it, and as I always say, if you have a laser top focus, you will get a result of some sort. That's the thing, is a lot of people are trying to do too much, and that is.
Yeah, that's still a thing for us. That's the thing. With growth, you end up, you have bigger capacity, bigger capability to do more, and the temptation is to keep doing more, which is the passion that we have for, trying to solve problems. But certainly that's very front of mind as we scaled. And I think the growth for Mojo of the next phase is different to what the growth was in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, great. Strategies around, to attract and retain. I know you guys do a lot of work with the same customers over and over again, and that's so powerful because you're obviously doing something really, really good to do that. But how do you attract and retain customers?
Yeah, look, I think our best customers genuinely see us as a partner with them for the long term. Yeah. And when I reflect on our customers that are in that place now, it often started with a very small piece of work that we did for them to demonstrate value very quickly. And I would say all of our top tier customers, it started very small, and then we're able to just build from there.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's fantastic.
And we've had a number of turnaround points. Again, back to we had the challenge in the early days of, well, how do we compete and position like an IT vendor, but that's not really who we are. To now, some of our challenges are, we might be working with a customer initially, and they're trying to interact us like a standard IT managed service provider. We're trying to provide advisory partnering advice, and there's a bit of friction. But then we've had a customer recently where that clicked for them through the interactions with our people and the way we work, non-transactionally. I was like, you guys are like a partner. And we're like, great. We didn't put those words in their mouth. And we're like, and then it's completely transformed what we can do for them in the conversations we're having. It's no longer transactional about, here's a requirement, how can we do that? That's commoditized. It's got to be about the conversation and what's going on in their context, in them as individuals, and how we can position something for them.
So true. I was in Manila on Sunday in Philippines, and I got to go as a guest VIP at a big tech event, and spoke to a lot of the big BPOs there through the guest breakout sessions. They had lined, the government officials had lined that up with me. But the thing is, at the end of the day, that one of the questions they asked me is, how do they build relationships with their suppliers, which are basically big IT firms in the US generally. And I was saying it's very hard to build relationships with people when you're a commodity, number one. And there is no need, but there's hundreds of these companies out there, and there's no value in solving problems. And you've got to get closer to customers to actually understand their problems and then solve those problems. And if you do that, then the results will speak for itself, and you will get organic growth 100%. For your consultancy firm. And that's what you guys have been doing. So it's really, really, it doesn't matter where you are, the same message resonates. You've got to solve problems at the end of the day,
That's right. Yeah. And
Yeah, go.
the only way to do that is to have a conversation, to actually pitch up and ask them some questions and be there. It's almost a novelty these days. To
Yeah,
have a
100%.
conversation
I
with
think
somebody.
everyone's,
Yeah.
went into the shells during COVID and
Yeah.
haven't really came out. But those companies that
Yeah.
are, building human connection, building
Yeah.
trust is definitely going to be the winning streak going forward. Okay. Now, we know IT, services markets evolving all the time. There's new technology, new upgrades, hardware, software, security. There's a ton of stuff that is happening at the moment. How are you staying competitive in the ever evolving IT services market currently?
Great question. Yeah. What we're talking about a lot lately is, what is the expectation of our team, and therefore what time and effort and investment goes with that to remain current? And I think my insight has been that some of it as a leader is just being about giving people permission that is what we need to do, and that is the expectation, that you've got an awareness of what's happening. And the analogy I'm using with my team at the moment to remain competitive is, and I got it from you, and actually the analogy of surfing. He said the most important thing is you've got to be in the ocean. You don't need to catch every wave. Sometimes you paddle, you ride the crest, and you pull off it. Sometimes you ride at the front of the crest, you ride it down. Now, he's not even a surfer, right? But the analogy works for me in terms of we've just got to be in the ocean. You need to ride every crest of it, but you need to be there. You can't be on the shore, just sort of, an armchair.
Definitely.
So the permission to our team is to dive in. And so how I've been remaining competitive with making sure our team's doing the things that are expected is just putting some challenges out there, just painting a picture of what a future could be, and then giving permission to folks to create a solution for it, just like we would when we engage with our customers.
Yeah, it's difficult to do that. I mean, when consultants are on the bench or they've got some free capacity, the last thing they want to do is develop something because it's not on a client side. And that's that mind shift. I've seen it for the last 30 years. Consultancy firms have battled with doing sort of innovation. This rolls into the next question around, what role does innovation play in your business strategy? I know you just did an awesome business strategy session like a month ago. What is the innovation component of that?
It's massive. It's front and center for us. And this has been sort of links back to that question around growth. As we grew, we knew what was important was to develop some methodologies and standards, ways of work. And we're very proud of, our both adaptable and disciplined way of work. But what we realize is sometimes when you define things concretely, you miss the opportunity to innovate. So front and center for us at the moment is actually building into all of our connections, all of our life cycle opportunities to innovate. And some of the things where we're inviting our customers, we're having innovation sessions just to open a conversation about what's possible, show some things that are possible. So we're meeting with them, with their executives, and just talking about what's possible from an innovation point of view.
Great. That's good. I think that helps give back to those clients as well, those clients you've worked with, because they need it. They need the help to innovate. They need the offsite facilitation as well.
That's right.
To take them out of the ban. And I sent you a text the other day saying, next time you speak to a client, ask them about the AI committee. And I was at an event last night, and I was speaking to one of my clients' clients. And basically, they all have an AI committee at the moment. But the challenge with that is, as I was speaking to someone last night, is what is the definition of that? And is that driving the innovation around AI? And probably not as much as what people were thinking,
That's right.
So I think those sort of innovation workshops or Spark workshop that you guys actually roll out to clients, I think it's a gem, and I think it's the way,
it is. And there's such a gift in it and such a joy when everyone could probably individually articulate a few ideas and list them off. So it's not just facilitating that, it's actually that genuine opportunity where a new idea emerges from those conversations. That's where the real joy is, or some energy gets given to an idea that might have been that enables it to move forward.
Now, next section of questions, and you guys ace this. Most of my clients, clients don't, and that's because they're busy, and it's no fault to them. And when I had my IT services firm, it's difficult to focus on the team and the culture. Team, obviously you want to hire the best staff and everything else, and the culture, you want to make sure that they're happy in a place that want to come to work, obviously. Sometimes that is a bit of a conflict between, utilization rates, and daily rates and what you can get for someone. How do you go about building your team? You mentioned a bit about it early on, but, if you think back about, and you probably didn't do this initially in a strategic way. You probably just did it naturally because you and are humans first. and IT second. So how did you go about building your team? And any thoughts on that?
I think, it's interesting reflecting on what I said right at the beginning now around I've always been attracted to the curious people who are a little bit different. So I think part of our strategy in the early days for building a team was actually because myself and you, and we didn't come into IT from IT, we came from another background. So building the team initially was very much around people who came from almost a non-IT background. And I would say we've probably got half and half in our team from that. So I think that was a key thing in the early days around that. As we've grown, I think it's giving, like, the word accountability and empowerment is overused, but setting the expectation that people can shape and craft the future of this business. That's been at our size and shape. We've always been, look, an individual can have a genuine impact on the shape of this business and what it does in the world. So that's been challenging for some people, but just having that in our ethos has been important to say, look, you're not here to just to fill a job description through here. It's very much you will have an impact by who you are, your particular skills, your creativity is going to impact not just the team here, but what Mojo can actually do for our customers. So I think it's giving permission for people to be who they are and create that sort of safe, welcoming space where people are genuinely valued for what they bring as an individual.
Sure, for sure. That's great. Yeah. That's great. How do you maintain it? How do you maintain that strong company culture? It's a cost as well. It is a cost, and that's always difficult. But sometimes I think, certain clients either don't do enough or certain clients do too much. How do you keep that balance right as a consultancy firm, David, as well?
Yeah, I think there's two dimensions to it. One is the sort of codification of it. We did go through, we articulated what are our values, what is our personality. We define that in our brand book, like we're joyfully eclectic and insatiably curious. So, we have little kicks like that. We craft solutions that excite customers. So we've got a whole bunch of, onboarding codification of who we are and what we do, and that's of value to our customers and it's of value to people who want to be part of that. But then the other part of it is we have an incentive scheme for our team as well. So that's been a big part of it. And then just regularly spending time together. We at least do a quarterly event that's all the team, all together, do some fun activities as well as review performance, celebrate success, all that sort of stuff.
Very good, very good. There's some consultancy firms, and I'm just going to mention them, like Accenture, for example. They have a program in place that sort of every year drops the 3% worst performing of their organization, basically.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of, sort of KPIs and utilization. And to me, it's a bit of a negative way to do it, but it's a big organization.
Yeah.
An Accenture person, but how do you keep your staff motivated and productive? Because people are humans. They're humans, and they go through their ups and downs as a journey in life. How do you keep people motivated and productive?
Yeah, I think I often categorize that into this for you people who just love technical stuff. I think it's talking about demonstrating and engaging in conversations, energy about gnarly technical stuff. Like I love to jump in our meeting rooms, like having a bunch of meeting rooms where we rally together, we're trying to nut out a problem. That can be hugely motivating for people who love that. The other part, which is interesting, there's another set of people who one of the most motivating things is just to give them a clear set of guardrails and guidelines in terms of what are the goals, what are the boundaries I can work with and go after it. So I think we balance those two things, a mix of like really bright sparks of collaboration and intense passion around the core business of building digital solutions with also providing some guidance and a track for people to kind of run on.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question around the sort of the team and the culture. How do you handle conflicts within the team? Is it, because humans, do clash every now and then. How do you normally handle that, David?
Yeah. I would say we're still learning how to do that like everybody. But I think, again, I come back to this expectation setting. We did some, got some outside in facilitation around the dynamics of organizations. And it was really interesting to have, there's always tensions that exist. Yeah. And what's become obvious to me is that sometimes, particularly maybe the kind of people in this industry, we always want to resolve the tension as if the answer is it's just a binary. We resolve it. It's either resolved or unresolved.
Yeah.
I think what we're doing a lot more of is there's the tensions that will always exist. So it's about talking about strategies to mitigate those natural tensions That, like, for example, I want to be individually rewarded. I'm important and valued, but we're also the collective. We also work together and want to celebrate. So that's a natural tension. And so it's one, acknowledging the tensions that exist, talking about how we mitigate it, and then developing our own, I guess it's that compassion for each other as humans, that we all have bad days. Sometimes we get it wrong, but we're committed to the best outcome that we can. So I think if I was to distill down our mindset around it, would have to be that I'm going to expect the best in you and we're both after the best thing for the situation and the customer, and we'll persist with each other and leverage curiosity to work through that, knowing it's a natural part of what we do.
Yeah, great. Last thing I do see when I see you guys in person, I see that you've got quite a few team members coming into the office, working together. They're doing activities at some time during lunch together.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And a lot of companies, I think, they've gone to this remote place, and it's very hard to build a culture remotely and, in a services type environment. You got to leverage on people as well. How do you do that if you don't have a connection with your colleague? It's different. 100%. But you guys are doing work on that at the moment. Can you mention anything about that?
Yeah. This is something I'm really passionate about. So we've recently, actually, maybe it's a bit controversial, actually asked our team to be in the office 3 days a week, up from 2 days a week. And look, for me, if we genuinely believe that there's more to you and I than just the outputs we can produce, then we have to acknowledge that human face-to-face interaction generates new insights and generates more than online. Like, we're more than the outputs that we produce. So it's sort of come from that place. And the other thought experiment for me is, particularly with the AI and its ability to have such a huge context. So what does it actually mean to be a human in the context where you've got agents which have got available to general context, as well as maybe some of your specifics? And I think for me, as I said earlier, I think what's going on for, say, you as an individual, what's going inside of me, going on in my context, what's in the context of the people from our customer and our team, who's actually wedged together here to solve this problem or realize the opportunity. There's something unique in that, and we believe in that. And there's those moments where your hair stands up on your head. My experience has been they typically mostly happen, not only, but mostly happen when people are in person together.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, great to see that's happening. And I think it's going to increase the sort of the team culture and the output to clients. That's what it's really about.
And the osmosis as well. That's the other big one. We have I really feel like us leaders in our career went through the opportunity to be on site, overhearing conversations that you weren't directly invited into, seeing how other people respond without having to be directly invited into that meeting. So I think from a pure learning and development and career development for folks in the team, just being able to observe, see, overhear, wheel over to somebody is a skill set that's really going to help them in their own career, and therefore, improve what the company can do for our customers.
Great. Okay, we're going to move on to the sort of like the services, what services you actually provide, and then the clients as well. So just talking about services, what type of services do you offer, and how have they evolved over time?
Yeah. So so we have 3 core services. So one is our digital practice, which is about building apps on the Microsoft stack. So our second service is around data and AI. So that's everything data, everything AI in through there. And then our third is what we call strategy and transformation. So we probably were always in the digital space, building apps, implementing sort of business process optimization, automation, and data was always an enabler. But we just realized that leading with data is just so important these days. So we established that practice a few years ago. And then strategy and transformation came out of our reflecting with our customers about, look, some of the best work you do for us is when you facilitate for us through a process, when you provide some advice to us, when you help understand and develop a roadmap for us. And we realized that wasn't called out separately as a service. So it's really evolved over time from just really focused around building apps, particularly in the sort of portfolio project and program management space, and doing sort of reporting off the back of that, to a data-led, digital first and sort of human-focused transformation of business.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice. And I love the way you describe those 3 pillars. It's fantastic. I mean, most people can't actually even describe what they really do. And it's it's crazy. But I know you've worked a lot on that as well.
Yeah.
It can come easy, so that's great. Now, your ideal client. Okay. How do you target your ideal client? And who's your ideal client at the moment?
We've got more than one ideal client, but I think At the highest level, an ideal client is someone who's of a certain size and shape who wants to partner for the long term.
Great.
So they're our best customers. So we can leverage all of those three services.
Nice.
So some of our best customers range from people working in advanced manufacturing through to state-owned corporations. So organizations which have a degree of complexity about them, have a number of different connected systems. That seems to be our perfect customers, are the ones where they realize actually it's not just a data problem, it's not just an app problem, it's not just an automation problem, it's actually how all of that fits together. Because we've already done the market scan, there's nothing off the shelf that picks it, or we've got 3 or 4 of those already, but it's more in some of those complex systems where we can help sort of simplify that for them. And really create a change for them in their organization.
Yeah. Now, the next sort of questions around the customer engagement and how do you actually sort of connect? You talked about that your ideal clients, partnering type of client, which is what you really put a lot of effort around. But how do you actually sort of connect? How do you go together? What's the because there's challenges around that because there's always this trust factor. From a client to a services partner, that here to rob us blind, or you know what I mean, whatever. Are they going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver? So what are those common challenges you see to build that relationship, that stops you from building that relationship?
I would say if we haven't invested enough time up front, just actually talking to them, like you mentioned earlier around, there's that tension sometimes between, well, what's the utilization, what's the scope, what's the budget? And I think sometimes having good discipline around budget, around utilization, around timing, around milestones, which is what the customer wants. Sometimes that discipline actually prevents building a relationship that can open up other conversations. But it's like this paradox because you have to first demonstrate you can do what you said you were going to do. You can do it to a high quality, do it to the value that, we agreed to in the business case. That can build the trust to then have a broader conversation about other things. Whereas other times, the fact that you haven't wanted to talk about their strategy or wanted to talk about what this is all about or at some higher level objective can actually create a transactional relationship. So it's a bit of I think initially, I think it's just getting curious, understanding whether what's the most important thing now to build trust. Is it to just be a bit blinkered and just do what we said we were going to do and what they asked for? Or is it the kind of customer where we need to do that plus actually start to talk to them about ideas and what else they could do? Or before we even get started, do we need to just relitigate the whole project, which we've done before as well?
Look, it's
not every customer's grateful for that.
It is a challenge, it's difficult and it's one of those things you'll have to keep on working on through.
And I think working with our customers, one of our key, I would call it a key success factors for building that trust is our customer experience program, which we started years ago. So every engagement we have a CX champion. And so that's someone who's independent of the project team and they schedule a conversation with like the project lead, the project manager or the sponsor on our customer side, just to check in on how we're going and how the team's going, how the project's going, anything else you'd like to talk about. And I've been blown away by, I could be involved with a customer having conversations all the time, the things that they will share with someone who's independent to the whole project, who might be a very junior person in the organization, and the impact that what they've shared and the insight and how we can adapt and tweak our services to better serve them has been amazing. So I think that's built a lot of trust, and it's been amazing to see that actually when people just ask questions about how's it going, and if someone who's got no information about to defend it, they're just there to listen.
For sure,
it's generally created a huge opportunity for us to build trust with our customers.
Yeah, brilliant. So I know you got a lot of projects on the go because you're a busy company. You got a decent sized team. One of those things that always battles with consultancy firms is obviously the quality of delivery. When you've got multiple projects, they're complex projects as well. And you got to deal with the client side and ever changing requirements from a client because they never know really what they're going to get until they start the project.
That's right.
They spend the time. It's amazing, hasn't it?
Until they end, actually, it's usually at the end we only ever know, have we got what we thought we want?
It's been like the last 30 years, I've been consulting that I've been doing is do they really know what they're getting, and how to educate them? But how do you ensure high quality service delivery? You talked about the CX program, that you got to hire an awesome person to do that. And I've seen her in action. She's really good. But, is that really the way you're going to focus for the high quality of delivery?
Yeah, I think, there's obviously that's from a customer engagement and
Yeah.
way of work, and are we aligned, and also are the outcomes and outputs we've got, adding the value. So we get that insight there. But from the mechanics of what we do day to day is we've got a framework called taste. Like we always want to leave a good taste in someone's mouth.
Nice.
So we've got some frameworks and some tooling around how we do testing through our technical deliverables. We've tasked someone at the moment with automating more of that. We're leveraging a bunch of AI tools to support us in the testing through there. But it's also, I think there's just a mindset as well that doesn't leave good enough alone is part of our culture as well. That sometimes even if you've defined the requirements well, even if you've written test scripts and automated those, sometimes that still it doesn't quite meet. So I think it's that putting the hat on of an end user. We're not all here just following a process. It's the process doesn't give us the outcome. Having the mindset of an end user and bringing that to what we do has been really important. Like, who are the people? What's their persona that's going to sit around and use this app or view the outputs of the data warehouse? Or maybe it's the technical person that needs to maintain that tooling. Who are they? What's important to them? And just to put that hat on. So I think defining personas and what's important to them is a key part of enabling.
I like the taste
quality.
Framework. Brilliant.
And that's all part of our taste framework. And the other current priority for us is being an organization that balances. We want high collaboration. We know that high collaboration generates really cool stuff. Our customers want it, but we also need high traceability to manage change, to manage chaos. So, we've set the vision. We've got Garth's an agent in our business who helps support us maintain traceability in our systems where there's changing requirements, where there's new requirements, where there's decisions and actions, to maintain that traceability for us automatically, so we can engage in high collaboration but have our systems support us from a traceability point of view.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. The last piece. Now, I know that when I'm talking to you folks, that you always give me a bit of updates on your sales pipeline and customer stories, and that's that's where success is really happening. So could you just talk through an example, just so it gives the listeners sort of an example what type of things you do? Can you give us one customer success story? Obviously, don't mention the company name or whatever. Just, maybe the industry, and sort of talk about the significant impact that you had on the client business.
Yeah, sure. So one comes to mind recently, a customer we've had, they're a state government customer we've had for many years. We've established such a trust with them, and we connect with them regularly. So we've got a couple of projects that were on the go, but then out of the blue in June, I didn't know this at the time, but the DG there had put a challenge to their department to say, I want people to come forward with some good ideas about what we could do. And our customer thought, well, who do I talk to when we want to talk about ideas and innovation? And they sort of came up to our office, and we had an amazing session on the whiteboard, just free form architecting what a solution could look like. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we'd turn that around using some tooling into a set of wireframes. And then right now we're building that solution, and we demoed it last week. There's going to be senior government stakeholders who are involved in some high-level budgeting processes. Really excited about the impact it's going to have on the process.
Yeah, it's going to help.
It's going to help. It's going to really transform the way that they do things genuinely. It's in some respects, it's a simple piece of technology, but the way it's assembled and what it's going to do is completely change for these senior government stakeholders the way they engage with their decision-making process.
Brilliant. It's nice when you actually do something, you know what I mean, for a client where it actually has a real impact. Sometimes you do a project and you wonder, it's done what it's supposed to have done, but what impact has it really done?
That's right. And you hear that from the executive director and DG. So this is, when their customers are using, this is going to transform the experience for the people who normally do that process. Not just, they'll do the process and it's just maybe a bit faster, or they're doing the same. It's actually going to be a different way to,
great.
To do what they've done for you. So it's a genuine example of transformation, not just, automate the same thing they've always done.
For sure. All right. That's been brilliant. And the next piece, we've got 2 more pieces left to go, and then we'll be done. So what's the biggest challenge you think, IT services industry has at the moment? I mean, I think I know, obviously, but what are your thoughts? And can you talk a bit about that as well? And if you want, you could be talking around the sales, marketing, or the staff, or the delivery. You can take one of those areas or multiple areas when you talk through that.
Yeah. Look, the thing I'm seeing ahead at the moment is just to keep differentiating in the market. Like, keep asking the question, what is it that we do that we uniquely do? How can we have an impact on this customer that's just beyond the particular skill sets that we've got at the moment? Because the ability to build apps, wrangle data, facilitate a workshop, it's becoming not a commodity, but our primary value is not in our ability to deliver that. It's knowing probably what's possible, how to orchestrate a number of those things happening together. So I think the biggest challenge is actually, what is the business model of the future? What is the mix of humans orchestrating agent orchestrators who are orchestrating fleets of agents? Like, I think that as a leader, because we've never done it before, just trying to envision what the shape of that looks like, because there's not other organizations you can easily go to and say, oh yeah, that's the next evolution for us. So it's inventing something new in terms of the shape of the organization. And I think continuing when I think about the market, the expectation is, well, because of all those things in AI, we should be able to do things quicker, less cost, to a higher degree of quality. So are we actually doing that? So those normal pressures downwards around from a delivery perspective. So I think, what is the shape of our business of the future occupies a fair bit of my mind as a challenge, because there's not a model. There's no model to go to. There's people who are doing well right now, but what does it look like? No one knows. We're creating that now. And then managing increasing expectations that things are done faster, cheaper, and to a higher quality, which has always been around. There's just a new competitor in the scene. Yeah.
For sure. So, I would say that, I always talk to people about who's your competitor in the market, and maybe it's, at the moment, it's AI. It's not the enabler, but it's a bit of a competitor.
Yeah, it is. The
services industry, it's a bit of everything at the moment.
Yeah.
It's been
like everyone's posting at the moment. Look what I did over the weekend. I could create this. We're able to, do this thing really quickly. We could wrangle this. So then it just, often it's like, great, look what I did. Then it's like kind of tumbleweeds with a lot of that stuff. And we do that too. So it's really about owning the ability to understand, well, what's of value to you? What's going to make an impact?
For sure.
And defining those use cases and understanding how you can orchestrate humans and non-humans to make that happen in the best way. That's kind of the skill set. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes the answer is we don't know, so let's experiment. So I think that's exciting for me to think about that. Again, different business model for us in professional services, where outside of our packaged offerings and products, that bespoke assembly of a custom solution for someone has completely changed how we can do that.
For sure. Thanks. Great. So we're on the challenges and lessons learned sort of section now, and sometimes quite hard to talk about it, but have you had any failures or setbacks, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. I think it's the flip side. I think the one that comes is the flip side of our human first, technician second, and our real people focused. I think what it's meant, I've certainly reflected a lot as a leader, that there's probably some harder decisions that would probably be more impactful to people that I should have had earlier. So, that's probably one of the hard lessons recently, is actually, and the other probably key learning is just to keep that tendency to overcomplicate things. I think as a leader, some of the best things I've seen happen is when we've set a clear vision, an example, focus on a few things and go after those. That's been a huge lesson for me, and just realizing the power of people being mobilized around fewer things.
Look, it's it's always that challenge. There's always that tension in the services world, back and forth. And that's just what it is. You got to, as you said earlier on, you got to live with that. And
that's right.
All the time. It's not a yes and no answers. The last question is around, how do you balance the short-term needs and the long-term goals of the organization? So I think about this all the time. I was with those big BPOs in Philippines on Sunday with some of the government officials, and they're losing staff. They're losing work from the US companies. And I said to them, they have to invest in becoming, solution providers rather than sort of order takers, if that makes sense. They have to be able to solve problems, and they have to skill themselves up to solve problems on the client side and identify problems, so they become closer to the client. Okay, so you really engage in that, and you've ticked that off. But for them, it's just trying to get that education, get them to learn how to do that. But you're doing that already. Okay, but the other thing is what actually happens in a typical services world. Even if let's just look at the big four model, the big consulting firms, they're also battling, not just the BPOs, because they are so tight on their profitability and their metrics and how they set up. So the only way they can do it is if you don't get utilization, we're firing people. And are they investing in their model, in their business model? They aren't. And the reason why they aren't is because they haven't allowed themselves, and they're so big, to invest in the short term. So how are you investing in the short term for your long-term goals, David? That's
I'll come back to that. But that whole thing around utilization, we had an insight. We had a big strategy planning day yesterday, and we thought that the importance of innovation and the value that we bring to customers. We had some real insights that some of the measures we use to measure performance are just in conflict with innovation. So hyper focus on utilization, hyper focus on, budget around a project, profit around an individual project in its budget can actually have the converse effect of actually not incentivizing people to actually think about how we could do it differently and what the innovation is. That was a key insight that for us that changes that. But just back to the question. Can you just repeat that?
Before you get back to the question, I just want to elaborate on that. I totally agree with that. And that's the problem with the big four. Because when you have, 10,000 staff, how do you actually manage services environment like that? It's so difficult. So you have these basic archaic KPIs to run the business, and that actually stifles everything, innovation.
It does.
So okay, back onto the question. Sorry.
Now I've forgotten what the question is.
No. So short term versus long term goals. How do you actually, how do you balance that out?
I think setting a cadence of how we manage the organization. So, in terms of, we have our strategy planning we do every year, and then we check in quarterly on all of those things. So there's the long-term sort of vision that we keep alive through there, and we're focusing on fewer and fewer things. In the short term, I used to think the answer to that was a fair bit of what I now call sort of bureaucracy, setting up a lot of internal governance. But I think the best thing in the short term, I find, is for us to just continue to focus on our core business, which is helping organizations transform the way they work. And the way we do that is we need to engage with our customers at a high degree of frequency. And I think that's the short term for me. So we're constantly because we could set all of the goals that we like for the long term, but if we're not aware of what's happening right now with their existing customers, then I think they're the things that protect you in the short term for me, is the existing customers that you've got and what they're doing.
So that's brilliant. On to the future and vision. And I was talking to a couple of ex-CIOs or CIOs that were my clients over the years when I had my consultancy firm, and there's a bit of a trend that I've seen to hear from those, and even from my customers. And then I read an article on the weekend from overseas where they were talking about some large enterprises where HR departments are starting to merge with the IT departments. And they're having sort of like an HR director who runs IT and HR. Right. And it's interesting when you think that. And then I thought about it over a period of time, and I thought, well, this is why. It's really because AI is obviously bringing people closer together, and the need for people to work with technology and that whole paradigm shift that's happening. It's evolving. And they actually did I think it was BBC, did a poll of how many companies that I think in the next 2 to 3 years where the IT and HR departments will merge. And the results shocked me. Okay. There's such a high percentage where they think this trend's going to actually change. And it sort of goes back to your ethos as an organization.
It is.
So just going back to the question I want to ask you is, how do you adapt to these trends? Because this is definitely a trend that I can see is going to happen.
I think it's really interesting what you said there. Like if you're going to be sort of deep in one area, say you're HR, you've got to be super deep to be competitive with anything. Like there's still a room. There's a room for experts, but you got to go deep to position that as an expert. Otherwise, your role is orchestration and understanding how you can assemble things together. So I think that's a massive challenge. And I was just reflecting on a conversation I had recently with one of our someone in advanced manufacturing, one of our customers who's just doing amazing stuff on a global stage. Just talking about the tendency that sometimes we have as humans, the need to get clear on roles and responsibilities for whatever reason, and then assembling around structures and bureaucracy is against the best work that happens when cross-functional teams are working together. Hyper focused on what's going to impact the customer. On that similar example, like some of their teams are now being deployed from, say, in IT into production. So people are working to see what's happening, what do we actually do, and then understand, well, if that's what we do and where some of the real pains are, how can we solve that? And the answer is never one tool, one individual. It's bringing a few of those things together. So I think it's just broadening your own. If you're not going to go super deep in one area, you've got to broaden your own awareness of what are the challenges and what's actually going on around us.
For sure.
So you've got something to say into those situations.
You have these two camps that's been around for so long.
Yeah,
they don't really know what they're really doing, and they don't know how they're serving. And that's interesting. Like if you look at Elon Musk's his whole innovation idea and his theory is rather delete before you innovate, because what you actually could be doing is innovating on something that you don't actually need. And
I love it.
That is actually quite a mind shift, because if what does IT really need? They're just serving HR. HR doesn't, it's this function of across the fence. We're not together.
Yeah.
And you've probably got some things that you don't even need in those environments. And if you bring them together slightly, you'll probably able to delete a lot of that function.
100%. It reminds me, I think, Mojo Soup, we started, it was the name of a band. So music's always important to me. And on that same vibe, I think it was Louis Armstrong said, every note that's ever been played has already been played. So, creating something, sometimes it's what you don't say. It's the note you don't play. It's where you do the rest, which is similar to what you were saying there. It's like, in some respects, every bit of knowledge and information, methodology, tool is now more available to you, and it can do things on your behalf, not just tell you how to do it. So maybe it's what you don't do. Maybe it's how you sift through the noise, and it is what's of value.
For sure. Last question, and then we can wrap up, because I know you're hell of a busy person. So I really appreciate the time and everything else, David. What would you give to an aspiring small IT services business that wants to start out, or someone's joining that sort of rank of being an owner, maybe one or two people? Is there anything that you would love to give them to help them on their journey?
Yeah, I think don't do it alone. That was something. It took me about 6 months when I started. I think it's when you're all the risk, all the reward, all the passion, but then all of the, the shadow side of that. I think it's, don't do it alone. I think would be the first thing. And then, get advice from people who have maybe a bit further down the road.
Sure. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the day. Thanks for that open discussion on Mojo Soup.
Likewise.
And you're a great business, and it's a pleasure to be working with you guys. And I love you guys to bits. Thanks so much for your time, David. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks for all your help. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on IT Mastermind Talks. Don't miss out on our next episode. Hit the follow button and stay updated. Want to be our next podcast guest? Contact us and share your expertise with our audience. Visit www.itmastermindtalks.com for more information.